Hey friends, welcome back to the Kirkpatrick Podcast. My name is Vanessa and I am here to talk all about this thing called the ignorance tax. So it's a phrase that I heard from someone that I follow on YouTube and social media that does like business advice and stuff, and talks a lot about like where he invested his money when it came to building his business and things like that. And he'd say, I don't pay for like expensive cars or like expensive clothes. Like I put my money into my business and paying to get me further, including, education and investing in coaches and things like that, because I'd rather pay my ignorance tax down by learning from others and getting their playbooks and things like that. And so it got me to kind of think about this concept of an ignorance tax. Okay, I'm going to say that a lot of times. Ignorance tax, not tasks. And I started to think of like organizations that say to me, well, we don't do evaluation, we don't measure to level 4 because that's expensive. And I'm like, interesting. So the actual act of measuring is expensive, but the act of not knowing if your program is working is not expensive. I'm like, oh, there's a big problem there. And there is a big misstep in how we do things. And I think when we think about how do we show up as strategic business partners, like CEOs don't go to the boardroom with like thoughts and feelings. They go with reports, with data, with facts. And we've got to start doing that ourselves. And this ignorance tax, we do that a lot, sorry y'all, we're paying it. It's a silent cost. Right? Like, what do they call sitting the silent killer? Like, not evaluating is the silent killer of our businesses. And it's what organizations pay when they don't know if what they're doing, their initiatives, actually work. So when we don't measure our initiatives and like the impact that they have, we have areas that are costly, right? That we're paying in spades for. That's things like lost productivity. People are spending time in training that doesn't even change behavior. Now, to be clear, maybe the training was great and in theory, deployed in the right performance environment should change behavior. And there is an environmental factor that's affecting training. That 100% could happen. Still doesn't mean it's a good use of time. And if we don't know that there is something out in the performance environment that is affecting whether or not behavior is changing, it's still an issue. And it's just going to go back to default to training. So that's one thing that like we're paying a lot for, right? Instructional design is expensive, We think about the cost of like how many salaried employees working on that. If you outsource it, or outsource pieces of it, the amount of time that like the people that you're bringing into the training, even if it's an e-learning or something asynchronous, like they're taking time away from what they should be doing in order to participate or in that training. So there's that. There is this misalignment that happens, and we have leaders that are assuming that the training that is being developed is supporting the strategy of the organization when it's actually not. That is a huge price to pay. One of the things that I think we don't do is look at our strategic plan or our goals for the organization and say, how does this work align to that? Like, where does it fall under? And we start to develop things that we think support the strategy, but are completely misaligned. And what happens is then that when they turn around and say, look, what are you doing to help move the organization forward and like align with our direction? we have nothing to say. We have nothing to show for it because we were working on things that didn't directly align. Whereas if there was a way to tie training to the strategy, it's very easy to say, one-to-one, we worked on this to help move this needle on your strategic plan. There's a huge tax that we pay. Tons of spend. When I think about all of the like these learning budgets and how big a lot of them are, there's this study from Rob Brinkerhoff. He did the study back in, it was for his book back in 2006. And Brinkerhoff said in the book, and cited, he did his research, 70% of training programs fail to transfer to behavior, on-the-job behavior. 70%. And I asked him when I first, so he's friendly with the Kirkpatricks, and so I was so blessed to get this introduction and to spend time talking to him, and he's just been so wonderful through my journey in this world. And I said, all right, I got to ask Rob, has this study been updated? And he was like, not formally, but informally. And in all of our years of studies, the needle has not really moved. It's still about the same. And now we're heading into 2026. This is 20 years later, and it still hasn't moved. So when I think about 70%, if you add up all the training programs that we do and we figure out the 70% of all of our budget, 70% of executing and building those programs is wasted. That's a lot of money. And a lot of money we could be putting in a lot of different places. But I think the worst part, if I'm honest, that we don't talk about is with this ignorance tax is the erosion of our brand as a department and our credibility. Because the thing is, at the end of the day, if we're not calling out, hey, we can do this training, and there are some things, some barriers that we're going to have to get over, that's costing, that could lead to failure, then training is going to get blamed. CEOs, CFOs, senior leaders are never going to blame the supervisors as the reason for the failure of training. It's always going to be L&D. And so you just get continuously seen as a cost center and not a partner. And here's the other problem that we have as an industry. We all come with biases. Right? And our biases aren't not wiped clean when we go to a new organization. We bring biases from what we've experienced in the past. So if every organization I've ever been to had really crappy training that didn't meet the needs or that was not aligned or never worked, who am I to assume that this organization is going to have cracked that code any differently? And it could be amazing training and great. But people will come into your classroom with these preconceived notions. And so this is not you need to do this on your own. This is an industry problem because the L&D department of another organization certainly has an effect, slight, but has an effect on your brand. I think the worst thing that could happen is to know that when your employee or your learner goes back into the performance environment or, back on the job, and they are directly told, forget everything that training has told you, that is the killer of every L&D department. Because as soon as, and it will come up, senior leaders, VPs, CEOs, COOs, CFOs hear this. They're like, why are we paying for all of them? Why do they have this big budget? That is a big waste. That is a big spend. And so, I think we think about where do we want to spend our time, our money, our energy, and our resources, we've got to start worrying about this tax that we're paying. And it's not just about, not the ignorance task of getting somewhere further through support of others, although that's going to be a whole different podcast episode. This is the tax that we're paying that's adding so much cost to our bottom line that just gets added. It's invisible. So it just compiles and compiles and compiles until it just is too much and it all breaks. And when you have these like small misalignments, it's like death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? It's the same concept. And so when we think of how do we remove or how do we get this tax down to zero through other things, the only way to do it is through evaluation. Full stop. Everyone has to get on board with the fact that we've got to relook at our learning and performance initiatives, the environment, how they are structured. Know that we're not doing this to like get rid of them, but we are doing this because this is important. It is strategic to the business, and we've got to get learning right so that people can perform. Performance does not happen without learning. Like, my podcast editor is going to laugh right now. I'm watching Ted Lasso for the very first time, y'all. I'm going to admit it. Started on the plane yesterday. I'm enjoying not thinking. I'm enjoying a lovely story. I'm enjoying the coaching and seeing how he is as a coach and I see you. And his like optimism. I am not that optimistic, but I'm enjoying watching it. And so anyway, so I say that and I'm like, well, they're all practicing. Like they're not going out on the soccer field, although I recognize I'm only like a couple of episodes in the first season, so they're not winning just yet. Although I'm sure that's going to happen soon, right? Because like, of course, very predictable. So when we think about they have to practice, so they have to learn the plays and they've got to, learn how to overcome obstacles and challenges in order to perform. We've got to like build all of that in, right? That's the only way we get rid of that ignorance tax. Eventually, I'll get that right. It's very hard. But we've got to start with evaluation. What's working, what's not, what's affecting the training once it leaves the classroom, what's affecting that transfer, what are the barriers? That has to happen. You've got to start with the end in mind, y'all. Evaluation cannot be an afterthought. It cannot be optional. We've got to know our North Star goal with every single program that we put out there. Like I said, we cannot do this alone. We're all on the team. Here we go. Another Ted Lasso analogy, y'all. It's like again, I'm only a couple episodes in. I'm sure I'll have more. Actually, and if you listen to Megan Galloway, you follow her on LinkedIn. She does a lot of things in leadership development, and she's got a podcast. I think she had a whole like Ted Lasso series on her LinkedIn, which I really enjoyed. So now I want to go back and watch it. Okay. Anyway, so he goes to the owner, Rebecca. Yeah, Rebecca's her name, and they're having a conversation, and she's like, I don't take part of those things. And he's like, well, when I coach in my team, we are all part of the team, no matter who you are, part of the organization. We all play a part, right? It's not just about the players performing, right? Everything around them, everyone affects that performance. That is what we need to be having conversations about with stakeholders. And again, like I know I've talked about this in the past, and I'm not going to assume that everybody listens to every single episode of the podcast, although you should, because it's wonderful. But I am biased. When we talk about how do we align stakeholders and how do we get them to care, it's that conversation that we have to have. It's breaking it down away from learning, away from business, and saying, can a soccer player, football player, or baseball player pick your sport? Do it alone. Even tennis, where like Serena is the only one, or Venus is the only one out there actually like whacking the ball, or boxing that's actually boxing. They've got people in their corner that are supporting them and that are helping them. It's all part of the performance. Even if only one person is executing, or one person is like throwing the ball or making the goal or hitting the ball at that one time, like it's about everybody. And when you say it like that, it starts to click for people. Hey, manager, you want your job to be easier with your employees and you want them to actually perform. You got to help us and encourage them, reward them, help guide them to perform. We are not there to manage them. We need you as part of the team. You need to be part of the coaching team. I may be the head coach where I'm directing and I'm creating some of the plays. I don't know if that's what they do or if there's someone else on the team, on the coaching staff that does that, but we're going to go with it. But you're the offensive lineman, right? Or not the lineman, I'm sorry. You're the offensive coach. You're there supporting them when they're performing. You are part of the team. You're part of just as much as myself. And that's how you start to get them on board. And that's how you start to pay that tax down. We also got to stop measuring crap that doesn't matter. Stop with the vanity metrics. No one cares about the number of hours that you trained. No one. No one really cares about your NPS score, I'm not going to lie. No one really cares if the facilitator was great. You care. And if there's a problem with the facilitator, I should hope that you would step in and adjust that. But I'm going to trust that you are the owner of your department and your work, and that you are going to make those adjustments. What I, as the CEO, care about is the big picture stuff. Oh, sorry, y'all. I just hit that. I'm going to care about, are people actually applying what they've learned on the job? Do they need additional support? Do we need to build a strategy to provide people with additional support? How is this impacting our organization and our North Star metrics? That is what I care about. The day-to-day, like if we have a problem with the facilitator, if it's big enough, then yeah, I'll get involved, sure. But for the most part, that's Jordan. Well, my team. Sorry, I'm giving the example now for my team. That's Jordan. Just measure what matters and only report out on what that stakeholder cares about. You know, there's a lot of noise that we have, and the less fatigue and less decision and the less noise that we can provide to our stakeholders, the better. And then the last thing to help with this ignorance tax is ensuring that feedback is a loop. Too often feedback will flow one way and it won't come back around. And, you know, it's like the old adage of like the evaluation sheets that like go into a drawer and that's where they live. Just because your evaluation sheets is now in like SurveyMonkey or Forms and there is a little analytics report doesn't mean it doesn't go into a drawer to die. It still does. And that's why you've got to choose, you know, what are we going to report out on? Because oftentimes we're measuring things and we don't have time to go through that many reports, right? We also have to be really strategic. Like we don't have time to manage all of those reports. And if we know that we're not going to act on something, then why are we collecting that data? When you've got the feedback loop, the beautiful thing is you can actually prove to your stakeholder when they say, what have you done for me lately? How are you? It's budget season time. Tell me about what it is that y'all did this year that I should care about that maybe I didn't see. You can say, look, we're reducing waste. We saw this program was not functioning and we decided to cut it. Or we're asking you, hey, can we cut this? We're going to reallocate those resources to other priorities. We're really looking for ways to maximize ROI. Don't be scared of evaluation. Don't be scared to find out maybe it's not working. Do you know how many times I hear that? People don't want to evaluate because they don't want to actually know that something's not working. Okay, keep paying the ignorance tax. It's just going to compound, and it's going to compound fast, and eventually disruption will happen. And there goes the department. So if you don't pay now your tax, it's like Uncle Sam, like if you owe taxes, it never goes away. It's always going to collect on his taxes. May not be tomorrow, but it will be at some point. It's the same exact thing. But if you do these things and you embrace evaluation and you embrace it, baking it into your organization, and you embrace doing yearly audits of your programs, of your reports, that is how you minimize disruption. That's actually how you build security. Like, that's the wild things that people will say, like, oh, I don't want to get into freelancing because it's not secure. Neither is your job. There is no security in this world, to be clear. There's no job that is secure. My business is not, like, me owning a business is not secure. Me going and being an executive or an employee somewhere is not secure either, right? However, I can have more security if I'm being proactive and I'm being looked at as a strategic business partner and someone that knows how to make tough choices and difficult choices. So friends, this ignorance tax, it's not a line item in your budget that you're going to see, although that would be fun to put in. But just know you're paying it. Every day you don't measure impact. And over time, it'll compound where it starts to outweigh your entire L&D budget. And that's where you're going to actually pay the ignorance tax. Friends, thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you all on the next episode. Bye.